So it got us to thinking, who's in and who's out? So we're going to take a look at some of the notable teams that missed the postseason last year in the National League. So which team will be in this year that was on the outside looking?
I think the Chicago Cubs. I thought the acquisition of Kyle Tucker, this was a big bat. I know Bellinger now a New York Yankee, but Kyle Tucker, you look at the metrics and this guy acquiring Presley from the Astros about a week to 10 days ago. So they shore up the bullpen. They bring in a guy that's a difference maker in Kyle Tucker. They brought in Justin Turner. They just signed him a couple of days ago. A team last year that the bullpen let them down in August and September. They were running on fumes. I think Presley's going to add to that bullpen. Kyle Tucker, a game changer in that lineup.
That's a huge addition. And, of course, Matthew Boyd. Let's go ahead and get to who's out. So a team that was in that's going to be out now.
As much as it pains me, where I spent the early part of my career at Milwaukee Brewers for two reasons. I think Devin Williams at the back end of the bullpen had the stress fracture in his back, came back, pitched in the postseason, and to me, Corbin Burns. I mean, you look at that, you look at Burns, he left the Orioles. Willie Adames. I mean, you look at what Willie Adames, every day, shortstop, premier position. I think the losses of Adames, the losses of Devin Williams are going to be hard for the Brewers to overcome. I will say this. Nobody does a better job in the sport, with maybe the rare exception of the Rays, going into spring training, not exactly knowing how their pieces are going to work out in the bullpen, but give the Brewers a lot of credit.
Yes.
Last year, their bullpen was terrific, and it was filled with guys that were non-roster invitees, guys that had been designated for assignment. They're baseball op peoples. They see something in guys that other teams don't like, and they make it work. It's going to be much tougher for them this year because I think the Brewers are not as good as they were, and the Cubs have made some improvements.
And they figured it out. You just mentioned Corbin Burns, obviously, over to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Yeah. Of course, Dan, that's my team. Is on the outside, but now they will be back in. They made it all the way to the Fall Classic not that long ago. They lost a tiebreaker for the wild card. That was so close. They finished 89 and 73. I just have so much faith in this team. Now, this might be an unpopular opinion of a team that was in. And obviously, I think, in my opinion, is going to be on the outside. San Diego Padres lost several key contributors to free agency this offseason. Had a lot going on behind the scenes, but Tanner Scott, Jurickson Profar, Ha-Seong Kim, and then Kyle Higashioka. I just don't know in such a tough division if they're going to be able to get it done. As we go over to the AL side, Dan, who's in, who's out?
I think who's in this year, the Seattle Mariners. One of the things the Mariners, they have to figure out how to generate some runs. You could make a case that the Mariners have the best stable of starting pitching outside of the Dodgers because the Dodgers are stacked. They have, in the last couple of seasons, wasted more really good starting pitching performances. They need to hit, and I think if they do hit, they are going to be a factor.
Oh, I like that a lot. Okay, so this is a tough one. Again, not going to be popular with the fans of that particular team, but what team was in last year that you don't think is going to be able to sneak their way in?
The Baltimore Orioles, and this is why. They lost two big components. They lose Corbin Burns via free agency to the Diamondbacks, and they lose Santander via free agency to the Blue Jays. So you take arguably one of their best bats. I get it. A team has young position players. They have a wealth of position players. But to take that big bat out of the lineup and Corbin Burns out of that starting rotation, it's going to put a lot of pressure on those other starters going into camp. And I know that Mike Elias, they have gone on record saying, hey, they like what they have. I'll believe it when I see it because I don't know how you can be as good of a pitching staff minus Corbin Burns. They're going to miss Burns.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And to your point, Anthony Santander, kind of heart and soul guy. He was able to galvanize the team. And without your ace, I think that takes away a lot of confidence. I get that.
And what hurts, too, the Yankees made some improvements. They switched as soon as they lost Juan Soto. And I'm just telling you, the Boston Red Sox have made some moves. Alex Bregman, the latest move. That division just got a lot tougher really fast.
And the Rays are going to ray. We can just agree to the fact that
they're going to be healthier
this
year. That's what they're going to do.
I completely agree. Speaking of competing in a tough division, I'm going over to the AL Central. Of course, they had 3 teams in the postseason. So the team that I think is going to actually make their way in, because I talked to Rocco Baldelli about this just a week ago. He said the big 3 are healthy, including Joe Ryan. So that's going to be huge. Twins entered September with a 91.7% chance of making the postseason, according to Fangraphs. So in my opinion, as long as they can stay healthy with that rotation and those big 3, I think they can make it in. There he is, big guy, looking really good. Now, this is a tough one. And we actually work with a guy who's a big fan of Cleveland Guardians. I covered the ALCS last season, but Cleveland Guardians, in my opinion, will miss out just because of the fact, Dan, that their division is so tough. Just 3 wins away from making it to the trip to the World Series last year. I don't know if they can hold on and get in.
What concerns me about the Guardians is this. Their bullpen, top to bottom, best bullpen in baseball. It just is. When you look at the abundance of arms that they have, but can they go to that well again if their starters don't give them enough length? It's easy when you have the stable of pitchers that they have to fall in love and start using a lot of those guys in April and May. They have the best closer in the game in Class A. When he's on and he's throwing strikes, he's as good as it gets. Cade Smith is filthy. This is a really deep bullpen. I just fear that they're going to have to go to that bullpen early and often, and that may do them in the long run.
And that fatigue set in. We saw that happen in the LCS. It could happen earlier, especially since you have more competition in the division.